So I'm joined today with Mélanie Valcin. And Mélanie, I would love for you to introduce yourselves. I find that generally when I read a bio, it's a bio that will post and it's a bio that has been kind of shared a couple of times, but I love to know how people see themselves, how they ground themselves in the work that they do. So Mélanie, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Ara. Thank you for having me. So I'm Mélanie Valcin. I'm the president and CEO of United for Literacy, formerly Frontier College. So we're a national literacy organization that literally works coast to coast to coast, we like to say. So from Newfoundland to BC, all across the Arctic to bring literacy supports to individuals, families, entire communities that want to improve their literacy levels. And I'm also a mother of two big teenagers. One is not a teenager anymore. I have a 20-year-old son and a 17-year-old daughter. I really I draw a lot of inspiration for the work that I do professionally, but also in volunteers in thinking that I'm contributing to building a better future for my two children and the other children of the world, of course. I'm also a board member on sitting on the board of Imagine Canada, which is the umbrella organization for all nonprofits and charities in the country. I'm very involved in the youth sector as well as a board member on the National Alliance for Children and Youth. And finally, I sit on the board of Le Devoir, which is a prominent newspaper in Quebec. And I'm learning all about the business of information and business development and digital transformation. So that's a very important a piece of my volunteering. And I just want to say, am I speaking too much? I'll still say this. I'm very involved in many other volunteering opportunities in my community. Why? Because, and I know we're going to be talking about this, I'll just say that this is what nourishes me, feeds me, inspires me, is to learn from my community and give back to my community.
Wow. Thank you. An incredible introduction. And I just want to say, like, I feel like you touched on so many volunteer opportunities and types of volunteering you do, but also I love that first initial discussion about the work that you do, specifically thinking about like, coast to coast to coast to coast, not just thinking about the provinces, but also thinking about Arctic territories, also thinking about all of the ways that people are like engaging in community and engaging in literacy in different ways. So I appreciate that like reminder because I think it's something that we're trying to really ground our work in as well. You mentioned so many incredible volunteering like types that you do. I'd love for you to like start by telling us what do you think of when you hear the word volunteer? What is the first thing that comes to your mind?
Keywords that come to my mind are images that I see when I think of volunteering, my own or what I've observed with other volunteers. I just want to say, by the way, that United for Literacy, our work is delivered mostly by volunteers on the ground. So I've been in the organization for 23 years. Yes, 23 years, not as the CEO, of course. I'm a kind of new CEO, 2.5 years in the role, but I started as a Quebec and Nunavut manager. And so throughout my 23 years with United for Literacy, I've seen how volunteering can shape people. And in my other experiences too, I've learned so much. So I will say, to keep it short, because I could talk about this for hours, to keep
Please,
it
go
short,
on.
keep it short. When I hear volunteering or I think of volunteering, I hear learning, exchange, occasion to build bridges, and I'm also thinking of discovery. Yes. So this
I
is
love
how,
those.
yeah.
I love those words, the discovery and the learning, and you touched on that in your introduction as well. I do think about volunteering as like a bridge, like an entry point that you get to sort of other industries, other worlds, other communities, just other ways of doing things. And I love that being the thing that you've mentioned kind of repeatedly. I'd love to know, like you spoke about the 20 years that you've been working specifically in the sector of literacy, and I know you mentioned being really grounded in your community in addition to serving on all of these boards. What would you say your earliest experience of volunteering or community care work was? Like, how did you come to this?
It's interesting because throughout my life, I've had it's difficult for me to separate the professional getting a
Mm,
paycheck life with the volunteering, doing it
Mhm.
on a
Yeah.
volunteer basis work, because all my work with United for Literacy has always been grounded in community, and I bring a
Mhm.
lot, or I learn a lot. I bring a lot of what I learned in my volunteering
Mhm.
life or in my volunteer life to the work. So it's hard to say, oh, I started volunteering when I was this age or that age. What I can say is that I started to do community care work even before I got involved with United for Literacy. My early career was more based in a university environment, but my first job where I felt like, okay, I'm starting to build something. I'm teaching and I'm learning at the same time. And to me, this is like at the core of volunteering, or of my volunteering experiences. And it was when I started to work with the Red Cross in Toronto. I was tasked with visiting primary school students and high school students, and to, you know, inform them about the mission of the Red Cross. But this was during the week of, this was a period of time where there was a big uh, push to raise awareness about landmines. So this is where,
Mhm.
this is a long time ago, I'm talking like 25 years ago, but I think it really grounded me. It's an important experience for me, because this is the first time that I was actually going in community to really teach children about an issue. In that case, it was landmine awareness. But also, I tell you, this is the first time that I discovered I'm learning so much from those kids, the energy that they're giving me back. The one kid I remember saying to a big gymnasium full of children, and I was like, okay, kids, children, how much do you think it costs to produce one landmine? And they were throwing numbers at me. And then I said, oh, it's $10 US. And then I was like, how much do you think it takes to take one landmine out of the ground? And this little uh, student raised her hand and she said, it costs one life. You see, I think I've made my
Wow.
point here. So I was,
Wow, that's beautiful. Oh my goodness. Sorry. I'm
so
just, yeah.
so this is this kind of exchange that I'm talking about, where you think you're there to teach, but you're learning and getting even more. And from that
Mhm.
experience, I went to also work in Mexico
Mhm.
City. I worked for the UN there, the United Nations Development Fund for Women. That is now an agency. But again, I was involved in different projects where I had to go in community, listen, learn, build bridges between my culture and the Mexican culture, or the culture of the people of that live in Mexico City. So all these experiences were very formative and brought me eventually to Frontier College, which is now United for Literacy, where again all our work is anchored in volunteerism, in building bridges with communities, in listening, and in mutual exchange. I always say this is why I love, why am I still here after 23 years? It's not because it's comfortable. Let me tell you, it's really, it's not comfortable. When you work in literacy and community, hard work, lower pay, but I'm here
Mhm.
because I learn every day, but also because of the exchange between, I'll give you an example. I always say our partners, for example, that in Nunavut, we work in partnership with Nunavut, some communities in Nunavut. And I always say there's a lot of things that this organization, United for Literacy, doesn't even know, that we do things a certain way because we've learned from, for example,
Yeah.
North partners to do things a different way. And it's not more and more, it's not, oh, we take programs that work in the South and we're exporting them in the North and try to adapt it. More and more, I've noticed, because we've been working
Wow.
in partnership with Indigenous communities since the 60s, 70s, more and more I'm noticing that some of our practices are actually,
Oh,
and even programs are actually coming from the amazing generosity of our Northern partners, who have taught us over the years different ways of doing things. Mhm.
wow. That's incredible. Oh my goodness. Sorry. I love that. I think that there's so often when we think about like scalability or sort of like, applying like the sort of programs or the learnings from one region, you're right. It is oftentimes coming from like I would say like the metropoles like Toronto or Vancouver or even Montreal, and then being like, how can we, try this out in other places? And I love that you've completely reversed that by making learning so central to the way you do things, to the way you volunteer.
Well,
Wow, that's
I will say, Hara, that all the credit to our partners that have been, again, so generous in sharing their knowledge and being patient
Mhm,
in accepting that sometimes we make mistakes. And also, if I
mhm,
link it back to volunteerism, uh, volunteerism in different communities express itself different way, right? It's not just a
yes.
North-South thing. It can be, for example, I've volunteered in many organizations in the Black communities, and it's sometimes things are done differently than in other community, in my own community than in other communities. And it's interesting because you have to adapt to the environment that you're in when you volunteer or you work in partner in community care. And at the same time, this is where it becomes rich. You bring your own self, your whole self to if you can bring your whole self to a volunteering experience in different settings, then that's when the rich exchanges start, right? Because you can share your experience and learn from the experience of others.
Wow. Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that in different communities, even the language of volunteering isn't the same. Like some places, volunteering isn't a word that is really used to discuss what we would call civic participation or civic engagement or community care. And I think here at Volunteer Canada, like we have become so deeply aware of I would say like the chasm or the gap between like informal volunteering and formal volunteering and the words that people use. And so I'd love to know, like for you, based on your, like I would say, quite varied experiences, is there a difference between community care work, grassroots organizing or participation, and then our formal definition of volunteering? And if so, like how have those differences sort of shown up in your life?
Hmm. As I said earlier, I don't know if I'm able to distill or extract
Mhm,
the from my life or even from what I see in others,
mhm,
other leaders, other community members that are, doing community care, but they're also mobilizing people. They're also making sure that everyone's involved. So that's the grassroots
mhm,
kind of approach. So, and then they run volunteer programs. Like I'm seeing a lot of leaders come to mind right now that are doing this kind of work. And
mhm.
I'm learning from them. And so it's hard for me to kind of separate everything you just
Yeah.
named. For me, again, I think when you do the kind of work that we do in the nonprofit sector, in the charity sector, for sure. And then when you join boards, it's all about heart, it's about community care, and it's about integrating all your experiences and then to share them back, right? So um, for me, when I hear volunteerism, I go back to your earlier question. When I hear volunteerism, I think what we need to do is to just expand a little bit the
Mhm,
definition, or not even the definition. Who cares about the definition? More the concept, like open it up so that
mhm.
all these experiences that people and all the heart that people put in community, whether sometimes it's for a paycheck, but frankly, I know a lot of people that get
Yeah.
a paycheck to do their community work, but it's a small paycheck, let me tell you,
Yeah.
and that they put triple the number of hours that they need to do that they not that they need, but that they
Mhm.
have to be able to reach their goals and help community get organized, mobilize, help volunteers to thrive. So again, I'm really thinking that what's important is how we see volunteerism in this country and how we can support it, whether it's to achieve any of what you mentioned earlier, whether it's to mobilize people, start a grassroots a movement, and or formally support volunteers. Like all forms are very valid and are needed, I would say. But I think it's all encompassing. And I don't know if it's the word volunteerism that has to necessarily uh, integrate all these forms of community care. but it's
Mhm.
certainly volunteerism is central to all
Mhm.
these concepts. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you've kind of spoken about like the communities that you sort of come into contact with. I know that you're based in Quebec because we were speaking about both being in Montreal earlier. I know that you're like obviously a Black woman in Canada. I'd love to know like how has your experiences within all the communities that you operate in informed the way you think of like volunteering? I know that this context here, even in Quebec, is so different than the rest of the country. And yeah, I'd love to hear more about the communities that you're a part of and the way that they inform how you think about volunteering.
Mm, that's very interesting. It's an interesting question. So you said it, I'm a Black woman, Black Francophone woman,
Yeah,
but at the head of a national organization based
exactly.
in Toronto. Grew
Hmm.
up in Quebec, but studied in Ontario, in
Hmm.
Toronto for a long time, and then worked and lived overseas and came back to
Yeah.
decide to, raise my family, because I
Hmm.
decided to raise my family in Montreal. So yes, lots of communities I have been in touch with in my life, and they're all part of the experience. And when I think of how this influenced my volunteering, I must say that what's interesting is that, well, I started specifically volunteering in my own community, so in the Black community of Quebec, quite late,
Hmm.
actually. It's interesting.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could think Melanie's been
Mhm.
doing community care work. And so not that I was not involved in my community, but like
No.
formally giving time, wanting
Mhm.
to mobilize. So I'll give you an example. In 2020, the federal government
Mhm.
gave big funds to the Black communities across Canada through the, how's it called again? The initiative to support Black communities. And
Mhm.
so the whole um, Black communities across Canada and organizations kind of mobilized themselves so that they could distribute those funds. And so I got involved as one of the evaluators of of all the proposals so that I could help not dispense, but spread
Yeah.
these funds.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this was a volunteer position, but it was so interesting because it was not just, oh, I get applications and then we as
Mhm.
community members, we decide who gets the dollars. I also got involved in delivering training to the recipients of those grants in Montreal so that they could improve their governance, their fundraising capacity,
Mhm.
the way that they market their 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 services, for example, or promote, not market, but promote their
Mhm.
services. So what I liked in that experience is that by the time I got to volunteer in the Black community, so in my community in Montreal or in Quebec, I had learned from so many national, international, even experiences. So I was ready to bring this entire experience to my community. So it was very rich. So it's funny because sometimes I'm like, how come I've volunteered and got involved in so many different initiatives and not necessarily in my own community as a starting point? Everyone
Mhm.
has a different journey. For me,
Yeah.
what I'm happy about is that when I started to volunteer in my own community in an organized way, if I can say, uh, I had I had like 15 or 20 years of
Yeah.
experience to bring and of knowledge and of expertise, if I can say, to bring to the community. So that I was very proud of. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, no, and I love that because I think what you're speaking about is like this is a thing that we speak about so often, like skills-based volunteering or like being able to bring expertise and knowledge and know-how. It's invaluable. And like you said, it took like 15, 20 years of you working in so many different environments to be able to gain all of that experience. And that now that is going to have a huge impact on this sort of like next generation of like Black community organizing in Quebec and across Canada, because they have your experience and your expertise informing the work that they do, and I think that's really incredible.
Exactly. And what's interesting on the other side, I've been volunteering on boards for many years now.
Mhm.
Lately, maybe for the past two years, I said it's a volunteer position. I'm on the board of a newspaper. And
Mhm.
this is a Quebec-based newspaper with a very strong history, 115 years, I think we celebrated this year, and its own editorial line. And it's an interesting environment for me then
Mhm.
as a Black woman to be on this board, which is an incredibly rich with experience
Mhm.
and expertise board. So I'm learning so much. I tell you, Harar, every board meeting and in between, it's
Mhm.
like, wow.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because then I can apply what I learned in other parts of my life, in my professional life
Yeah.
or in other volunteering experiences. But I just want to say that this is it's in another way. Then on this board, I have to, and I'm allowed to, of course, and it's great. I'm bringing my whole self as a Black
Mhm.
woman on a board uh, um, that is slowly diversifying itself, if I
Mhm.
can say. But I can bring my outlook to help
Mhm.
shape the future of a prominent newspaper. So that's super exciting to me too, and so rewarding. Again, with the
Mhm.
learning, that me bringing my
Mhm.
vision or my ideas to the table, so that we can make sure we have a newspaper that will evolve,
Mhm.
that will resemble uh, today's Quebec, if I can say. So yeah, this is what I'm trying to bring there. And it's the same for I volunteer also for, my God, this is the fourth, fifth year with the McCall McBain Foundation. They're a foundation that's giving scholarships to students to come study at McGill to do their graduate degrees. And so from the beginning, I've been on their selections committee, like national, but also international now. Like they're kind of a Rhodes Scholars model. Um,
Yeah.
and so there, again, I'm bringing my entire self, and I see those young students that are trying to get this prestigious scholarship. I get to interview them, I get to know them and to interact with them. And I'm talking about this experience because when I know that I bring my own self, I know they do the same, and we learn so much from each other. And it's been such an incredible experience to be able to, for the past 2 years now, even meet, people from all around the world that end up coming to McGill in Montreal and have contribute exceptionally to, our university committee, but the committee at large, but also gain all this knowledge that they can gain at McGill. So anyway, I don't want to go too much into this, but it's again, the words that come to mind is again the exchange,
Yeah.
especially when you're willing to be open and be yourself. The
Yeah.
exchange is bringing so much
Yeah.
learning.
I I love that piece because you've mentioned it a couple of times, and every time you say it, like it gives me chills. Like the idea of bringing your whole self to sort of every single opportunity, specifically volunteering, like that you do, and like the ways that that empowers you, and the ways that it encourages other people, the way that it inspires them to show up in the same way. And I'm wondering, like, is that how you've always approached volunteering,
Mhm.
or has that changed, like the way that you approach volunteering evolved throughout your professional career as you, like, grow older, you become more mature, you learn more about the world?
I think you're putting you're saying exactly what I
Okay.
I was about to
Wow.
say. It's true. It's interesting. Earlier, I was saying, oh, I wonder why I didn't get involved much in a
Mhm.
more organized way in my own committee to volunteer before, like 4 or 5 years ago. Or I
Mhm.
think that there's also for sure there's a maturity there that has come to
Mhm.
me in terms of confidence, in terms of
Mhm.
knowing what I can bring to the table. And this is
Mhm.
to be built over a lifetime. Like I'm not done. It's not like, oh, now, I have so much to
Yes.
bring. And it's like, but it's more, but it's true though, with it, I don't know if it's age, but it's with experience, you gain more
Mhm.
confidence. And again, I've started to sit on boards, for example, such a long time ago. So you start with a small local board, and slowly you branch out to and gain more experience and also get more exposure. So now I'm on the board of Imagine Canada. This is so exciting to me because this is my sector. This is a sector I
Yeah.
care so much about. So to me, it's like the ultimate privilege to be sitting on a board of the umbrella organization that speaks for the charity sector, right, in Canada.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think that 10 years ago I would have had the confidence to think, okay, even
Mhm.
if I don't know everything, I'll learn. now I'm still I don't know everything, but I have the confidence
Yeah.
to say I can contribute and I can learn from, I can bring something to the table and I'll learn a lot. So that's interesting. I think, yes, with a certain maturity and experience comes the confidence to get involved sometimes even more in bigger and bigger things. The other thing I wanted to say is that I always, there's one regret that I have, if I can say, when it comes to
Yeah, of
volunteering.
course.
And it's a little bit of a, if any younger people, younger than me, people hear this, I hope this is a lesson that can be take. If there's one thing I want to say is, do not, no, not do not, let's say it positively. Please, young people, get involved.
Mhm.
And sometimes my regret is that I didn't get involved as early as I could have, meaning I was always involved in my community because of my work, but that's the professional life. I started to get involved in a lot of other initiatives, like sitting on boards, being on selections committees, more like I'll see it when my kids started to be older. Why? Because in my head, I was like, I have my job, I'm already caring, I'm already giving it like 300%, but I also have to be a good mom, so I don't have anything else any other time. But in hindsight, I realized that just even sitting on, you don't have to be involved in a zillion activities, but doing it 2 hours a week or sitting on one board is bringing you so much experience, expertise. You're learning so much as well, and you can start contribute that way. And it's not, of course, you're responsible legally, but it's not something as big as people think. I don't want to diminish
Mhm.
board involvement in terms of, but it's just that it is big and it's important. But
Mhm.
I think it's doable even if you have young kids at home, and it's desirable that you get involved. I talk about boards a lot, but it can be other forms of volunteering because
Mhm.
this is something that will nourish, feed,
Yeah.
nourish your life, enrich your life so much, both at the professional and personal level. So
Yeah.
yeah, I encourage people to not think I don't have time. Get involved slowly, and you'll see that you're also able to crisscross and um, your experiences and the networks that you develop by getting involved also are amazing. And then you never know when someone that you met volunteering on a Saturday afternoon will be a great contact for you professionally, right? So. Mhm.
No, I think that's a great advice. And I think you're right, especially in terms of like board involvement can seem so daunting and so scary
Mhm.
to so
Mhm.
many people. And I think reminding like, young people especially, but also just people that are part of the communities that organizations are serving, that we want boards that like, represent communities. We want to bring those varied like life experiences that you're saying, like you want to bring your perspective and your whole self to these decision-making roles. And I think that that is a great reminder for people who are scared about by institutions a little bit.
For sure.
Speaking,
But I'll just add
oh,
one little thing. I was just to say for fellow Montrealers who would be listening,
mhm,
there's such a group that's called Le Groupe des 30. It's organized by
mhm,
the city of Montreal. I don't know if there's the equivalent in Toronto, Calgary, Edmonton, across the country, but it's great because this is every year there's a cohort of about 30 people. I was a member of the 2022 cohort where
mhm,
it's our goal is to promote diversity and governance in our
mhm.
environment. So we get a bit of training and everything, but the goal is that then you kind of make a pledge after
Yes.
being part of that cohort that you'll bring that voice, you'll bring your whole self, you'll encourage
Mhm,
people from diverse backgrounds, from different backgrounds to get involved so that, as you
mhm,
know, when we talk about a board of directors, like there's an issue in this country in terms of
mhm.
representation. So again, I'm kind of pitching, doing this pitch
No,
on
I think it's
the group,
amazing.
the group des Trente to fellow my fellow Canadians that are coming with different backgrounds and or could have a disability like I'm not targeting any group of course.
Yeah.
I'm just I shouldn't say targeting. I'm not inviting a specific group. I'm just saying you're young,
Mhm.
you have a perspective to offer, get involved because this country needs it badly.
No, I completely agree. And I think that I think you're probably one of the most equipped people to ask this based on just the sheer amount of experience you have in terms of serving on boards and in terms of being in the governance, like the volunteering governance sector, which I think is so interesting because it really anchors the entire nonprofit system. Like our governance structure is also a volunteer structure. And yeah, I imagine you're very familiar with the institutional strengths and weaknesses and gaps and opportunities. If you could make one institutional change to support volunteering in Canada, what would it be?
Hmm, that's a very good question. Well, first of all, I would say I invite all level of governments to support volunteer initiatives. Volunteers are what
Mhm.
uh, keeps our social fabric together. Also,
Mhm.
like when I say volunteer, like as a big whole.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we need provincial, municipal, federal governments to invest dollars in the volunteer sector, in the voluntary sector, because yes, the work of a volunteer is free, but the structure
Mhm.
to nurture,
Yeah.
mobilize, train, support volunteers is not one.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and that structure is very important because that again,
Yeah.
volunteers hold our social fabric together. I also think that businesses have a huge role to play. I love those
Mhm.
models where employers get it. They're like, hey, when my employee feels valued, feels like they keep on learning, they're more happy at work. Hence, it's even good for my business. So I will actually find a way to
Mhm.
find a cause, find an organization where my staff can become volunteers. Those organizations, those businesses that actually even free up sometimes during office hours, like people are getting paid to
Yeah.
volunteer, I think is fabulous. It's such a great way to um, make sure that yes, employees feel supported, or they can come to work and feel whole and feel like they're useful because they can volunteer through the employers, and then the receiving organization is also benefiting from having this pool of volunteer that's reliable. We know they're going to be there because it's yeah. So when we say institutional changes, like in that sense, I hope that the message can be loud and clear directed to businesses across the country. Get in touch with your volunteer organizations, the organizations that are in the charity sector that work with volunteers, and get your employees involved because it's helping our sector and it's good for
Mhm.
you too. And
Yeah.
it helps you with employee
Yeah.
retention, productivity, less absenteeism.
Mhm.
Like there's studies around that, right? And so these would be the two things that I would say. And then when it comes to like just overall, I'll say I just said it, but I'll say it again. I really think young people are
Mhm.
facing a lot of challenges right now, uh,
Mhm.
social challenges, economic challenges. So I get the struggle to find time to, uh, if you see it as give back, I get it. If you see it as volunteering is an opportunity to learn, exchange, build bridges, build your network, because you'll never know who's going to be in the room and help you later on. I think without putting pressure on the youth, that's not what I'm trying to do. By the way, I'm just trying to, for those who are hesitating and are like, oh, am I going to be? I'm like, yeah, take that step because you'll see
Yeah.
the rewards are so much bigger than what you can
Yeah.
imagine. Mhm.
Yeah, and I don't think it's pressure at all. I think that like if we know as a sector that what we need is greater youth involvement, then that means that we can create programs, remove barriers, target our messages, like you're saying, to ensure that young people know that there is space in the volunteering sector for them, especially because the way that people think about volunteering is changing so much, over generations. And so I think that that's incredible. It's an incredible message to us as well as Volunteer Canada, but also I think to the nonprofit sector and to volunteer engagers about the different ways that we want to engage young people and the different ways that we want to engage corporations and the different ways that we want to engage government as
Sure.
well. Yeah.
And I love that you talked about removing barriers. That's a very, very important
Mhm.
point. I've seen amazing examples. I'll give you one.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
Foundation for Black Communities, I think it's
Mhm.
last year. Is it last year? They had a call for proposal.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love that the way, I think it was their first call for proposal, and the way that they decided to disperse the funds was instead of, and this is what the initiative for Black communities did as well. They came up with community
Yeah.
groups,
Mhm.
community committees. Um,
Yeah.
so it basically the selection committees were made of community members. I was one of them, and what I loved is that the time and effort and energy that you were putting into this was recognized with the dollar amount. So I was not paid to do this, but there was a stipend given. You had the choice to keep or give back. I decided. So, but I'm looking for a young person that's trying to get involved.
Mhm.
These kinds of punctual opportunities, like I met some people through this, and these kinds of punctual opportunities where we decide to remove a barrier by giving a stipend to the person that get involved, I think is fabulous. So again, you give an opportunity to a young person or less young person to get involved, but if that has if them having to volunteer takes away some hours, it's recognized to a stipend. And then again, people that do it for me, it was to give back to my communities. I didn't want to keep that stipend, but
Yeah.
I can see how some young person might be like, well, this is going to help me with my own groceries this week. So I'll keep it, and you deserve it. You should take it.
And
So
I love that too, that you like what you're mentioning is a model that recognizes that different people have different financial capacities, time capacities, like
exactly.
relationships to kind of the sector. Giving the option of a stipend, like you're right, it removes a barrier for people who can't make the trade-off between the hours spent working and being involved in their community versus someone who can because they maybe have more financial security. Like it is a recognition of the different ways that people are showing up to these
Exactly.
opportunities. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really I appreciate that. I think that's important. Okay, we have one more question, and I think it's really great because I feel like we're ending on a positive note. What would you say is the greatest strength of Canada's current volunteering and participation ecosystem?
Hmm. Two things. First, the people who make it.
Mhm.
Canada has a long-standing history of volunteerism. If I just think even of my organization, United for Literacy, we used to be called Frontier College. We were founded in 1899, and I know that there's charities that are even older than that that are volunteer based. So we have a long-standing culture of volunteerism with a
Mhm.
lot of people that are willing to get involved and to push this country further.
Yeah.
We see with everything happening right now with our southern neighbors, I can see already like this sentiment of rally and people.
Yeah.
I feel like we know that we're stronger together, and
Mhm.
we're getting ready to be Canada together. And I think
Mhm.
this is reflected in the voluntary sector as well. The other thing I wanted to say about that is that I think what's very amazing right now, and it's work. There's still a lot of work to do, but this
Mhm.
whole notion of volunteerism looks different from different people. We just talked
Mhm.
about youth, but also starting to the fact that, for example, the federal government in the past few years started to fund, let's say, the Black volunteering
Yeah.
and community sector, charity sector. I know
Mhm.
it's happening also in other communities and
Mhm.
with other communities that historically were not necessarily part of recipients of government or business or
Mhm.
support in terms of dollars
Yeah.
and other support. So I love that we're starting to kind of go a little bit beyond the surface and
Yeah.
look at different communities, how they do their work and what kind of supports they need. Uh,
Yeah.
and that funding is starting to flow that way. I think
Yeah.
it's great. And we're just at the beginning, I
Oh,
think.
that's amazing. I love that. We're just at the beginning.
Mm.
Okay. Thank you so much for speaking with me today, Melanie. I know that everyone who listens to this is going to have so many insights just to take and like really mull over. I'm thinking about it. I'm really stuck on the idea of like showing up as your whole self to kind of volunteering opportunities. And I think that that's something that's really going to resonate with many people. Do you have any parting words before we leave for today?
Well, just thank you, first of all, Harar, and kudos to Volunteer Canada also for, leading the charge for the volunteering sector and to also starting this work of looking beyond the first layer of volunteerism.
Mhm.
I know this is this has been some work that has been going on for a little while now. So kudos to Volunteer Canada. Thanks for having me. And to everyone in Canada, yeah, get involved. It's so rewarding and it's so important, especially with what's coming up potentially in our country and in the world. We got to be together, stick together, and work together. Give some time to each other so that we can face anything coming our way.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, Mélanie.
You're so welcome.